The Mercedes W15 isn't just another contender in the Formula One circuit. It's a game changer poised to redefine the race and leave Red Bull in the rearview mirror. Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes will be hoping the new innovations to the Mercedes W15 will redefine F1 and put an end to Red Bull's dominance. Today we'll take a closer look at the Mercedes W15, what things that we can expect, and how this car can redefine Formula One. The W15's launch comes at a very important time for Mercedes, which wants to get back to being the best after 2 tough seasons and make Lewis Hamilton pleased with his last year with the team. Toto Wolff talks about the findings of the W15's first test in an article from Sports Illustrated. In a recent report from preseason testing in Bahrain, he was optimistic about how the W15 had performed so far since the Brackley car was used for the first time. Wolff said that the mood in the camp is positive. We had a car in 2023 that was a handful and difficult to understand sometimes why it was doing what it was doing. That has been the emphasis for this season, to have a stable platform from which we can actually develop. Let's see if we have that. It's very difficult to say. We had a filming day yesterday and some aero running this morning, so not relevant lap times, but so far the feedback from the drivers was, yeah, this is something we can work with, so that is encouraging. In an article from Race Analysis, the most interesting new idea was definitely what the Mercedes engineers came up with for the front wing, which has a very uneven chord in the back flap. In fact, a medium-sized chord gives room for a slight one halfway through its span. This is done only to meet the standards of the technical regulation. The assembly that was made looks a lot like the front wings that were used in Formula One from 2009 to 2021. That was the last year that the rules required a neutral central section from an aerodynamic point of view, which made a big difference near the part that created aerodynamic downforce. Because of the strong brake mentioned, a vortex called Y250 separated from the front wing right there. It got its name from being 250 millimeters away on both sides from the vehicle's center line. The Y250 vortex was first seen as a problem with the old single-seater ideas, but over time, it was used to the team's benefit. Instead of trying to weaken it, they decided to make it stronger and use it to seal off the sides of the floor, so that air doesn't flow around them. The W15 from Mercedes could bring back the Y250 vortex, but in a much smaller way. This is because Mercedes needs to make sure that the curve of the rear flap stays the same. Obviously, we also need to think about the fact that the main plane and the other 2 flaps have their own angles of attack. This means that they are made to create drag and not be as aerodynamically neutral as they used to be. The nose cone is shorter and now connects to the first flap instead of the main line, like it did on the W14 last year. The goal is to make room between the first 2 parts of the wing so that some of the air that comes into the car goes under the floor. Aston Martin has also tried to find a similar answer in the past, but with its most recent 2 single-seaters, it gave up on the idea in some ways, since the nose cone doesn't look like it's meant to be flexible, like the Red Bull RB20s, and Mercedes will need to be good at handling this kind of front wing. With regards to the back suspension, the most important change is that the Brackley team switched from a pull rod layout to a push rod one. This is similar to what 8 of the 10 teams on the grid have done, with only Ferrari and Haas sticking with the pull rod layout. The technical director of Mercedes, James Allison, said something about the modifications. We put a lot of attention on improving the rear axle of the previous car, which was a bit unpredictable. We worked on this to try and create a car that is easier for the drivers. At the beginning of a corner, when you brake hard and you roll into a corner, the rear axle has to be solid, and then, as you approach the apex, the car has to feel progressively more agile and eager to turn. We tried to achieve exactly this effect with the W15. The preseason testing is already done, and Hamilton and Russell share their thoughts about their newest car. Hamilton finished 3rd on the 2nd day of preseason testing. He completed 123 laps as he got ready for his last season with Mercedes before moving to Ferrari next year. He said that it was a productive day out there. We gathered lots of learnings about the W15, both in our long running and single lap work. We've clearly made an improvement with this year's car, and it's much nicer to drive. Mercedes has dropped in the standings since 2022 when new technical rules were put in place. As the team tries to get back to winning ways, Hamilton has promised to help make the team a bit better. A big thank you to everyone at Brackley and Brixworth for the efforts they've put in to deliver that over the past year. I'm really grateful for all their hard work. We've still got progress to make, of course, but this is a good foundation for us to build on. We'll keep our heads down and continue to work to find improvements, both over the rest of the test and into next week. I'm looking forward to being back in the car tomorrow morning and continuing that learning. On the other hand, George Russell also shared his thoughts about W15 as he finished third in the day, 3 testing out of 67 laps. It was great to drive the W15 for the first time in anger today. From hitting the ground, it felt like we had a good foundation to start from. We completed lots of laps and might have plenty of data to go through tonight. We ended the day in a reasonably good spot, and we can build from here over the next 2 days. Overall, the W15 does feel nicer to drive than last year's car. It was a positive first day, and I'm looking forward to being back in the car on Friday. James Allison expresses his confidence about their new car. I think therefore that in addition to us, I hope, having worked well, my guess is it's going to be relatively busier near the top of the grid this time around. If we are good enough to be in that fight, then operational things, driver excellence, the reliability of the car, the skill of the crews that service it, all of those things start to potentially become the differentiating factors. He also added that beating Red Bull is not easy, but it is possible. I think Toto drew the comparison between climbing Everest and the challenge we have in front of us. That's a fairly apt comparison, because Everest is the sternest of challenges, but it is nevertheless something that is possible to do. I think that's how we're taking this, as something where we are absolutely a challenger rather than a favorite. The 2024 season is getting started, so how can W15 redefine itself to beat the Red Bull? Being able to change and adapt to the constantly changing circumstances of the sport is a big part of why the Mercedes team has been so successful over the years. But this season, there has been a big change in the order of dominance. Verstappen has won the last 3 drivers' titles, making Red Bull a strong candidate for the 4th consecutive championship. This has given the Mercedes team a new task. They are now trying to find new ways to stay ahead of the competition, since Lewis will be leaving the team at the end of the year. The team has always been working hard to make the car run better, and the most recent changes have shown promise. The team has been working on making the car faster, better at handling, and more efficient. The Mercedes W15 is now better prepared to race against the Red Bull after these changes. Although Red Bull is a threat, the Mercedes team is still sure that they can recover and regain their position as the best. They have shown that they are not afraid to change and adapt in order to stay ahead of the competition with their new car and new business plan. The Mercedes W15 could change the game and beat the Red Bull team in this year's title, thanks to their skilled and experienced drivers and the hard work of their committed team. Do you believe that Mercedes can create noise, or will it be another lackluster season? Be sure to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below.